Hello and welcome to another episode of TTG Conversations 5 Questions News Series. I'm Hemla Chow, and joining us today is Robert Hecker, who manages the Pacific Asia arm of Horwath HTL. Now, Horwath is the world's largest hospitality consulting brand with more than 100 years in the industry. And with 43 years in the field, Robert joined Horwath in 1988. And he is involved in the planning and analysis of hospitality projects around the region. And today, Robert and I will discuss how the emphasis on safety, hygiene, and personalised care will affect budget and mid-range hotel brands and what that might mean for cost. So, Robert, can you please start out by giving us a broad sweep? What will budget and mid-range accommodation look like in the new normal?
Sure. Actually, I don't think they're going to be any different from what they have been. Particularly these types of hotels, because budget hotels in particular, you could call them limited service, and even the mid-range hotels to a certain extent limited service. So they're already kind of well suited to the current environment and the current procedures that you have to go through in terms of limiting the contact and the service points. So I think going forward, I don't see much change to that. And we'll talk about some of the other aspects in a bit. But, other than, let's say, having your cleaning protocols being front and center, or like a stamp of approval of how you do your cleaning protocols, that's probably going to be a consistent thing that everybody will have across all hotels of any type. But I think all of the other procedures are probably going to fade away as we get past all of this COVID stuff.
I see. Well, what do you mean by all of the other procedures fading away?
Well, just, the temperature taking when you walk in, and, filling out forms, and, those kinds of procedures, and, how many people can be in an elevator, and all those kinds of things.
So you foresee that kind of slowly phasing out as the situation improves in the future?
Yes.
All right. Understandable. And, but there is the, definitely the trend that hotels are having to invest more, at least in the short to medium term, in more strict and stringent safety and hygiene processes.
Yeah.
And so, how will this affect the backend cost, and might this eventually translate into higher room rates?
Well, for sure, it's increased costs. I think that's been fairly well known. People are already talking about it, how it's increased their cost in procedures, manpower, and supplies. So theoretically, that would be reflected in room rates eventually when the market allows that to happen. But I think in the recovery stage, I think there is the general expectation that room rates aren't going to be increasing anytime soon, because there's going to be more of a period of bringing the customers back and the competitiveness that's associated with that. But eventually, they'll want to try to get back to the profitability levels they've known before, and making up for those increased costs.
Yes. And you talked about, being competitive, and the definition of being competitive now is very different, because now consumers prize a lot more personal care and service in their hospitality experience. So even things like special requests with in-room delivery is quickly becoming the norm. So for hotels that, as you said, brand themselves as no frills, how can they reposition their offerings?
Well, I think, if we're focusing on the budget and even to some extent mid-range hotels, it never was part of their business model that they have room service or things like that. So I don't think they're going to change to accommodate that just because of the current situation or any of that. I think those things can be addressed basically as it was prior to this. Is like, let's say at a typical budget hotel, if somebody wanted something, because typically those budget hotels don't have restaurants, they just have the breakfast rooms. And so if they wanted anything and they wanted to stay in their room and eat, they would order it and have it delivered. And that can happen now, and that's probably the way it will continue to happen in the future. I think with the breakfast rooms and things like that, there'll be some change in the procedures until such time it's felt that that's not needed. But they won't have the buffet style approach that they've had in the past. It'll be more of people selecting what they want and having it brought to them, that kind of thing. And in the mid-range hotels where they might have a restaurant, an all-day restaurant, it'll just be an adaptation like any restaurants are having to do now today. But I don't think it's going to change. Anybody who did have room service before, they still have those procedures to do that, and just with the extra protocols.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that actually budget and mid-range hotels, they have a bit of an advantage because they are used to having that low-touch approach to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, at least in the US anyway, where domestic travel has been continuing in a lot of places, it has been recognized that those are the hotels that seem to be doing a lot better in terms of occupancy.
Mm. Could it also be because of, like you said, the low cost attracting the market?
I don't think it's so much the low cost itself. I think it's actually the aspect of how in some of those places you can literally drive up to your door and go into the room kind of thing.
Mm. So a lot of that last minute booking being captured as well. Mm.
Yeah,
and
just easier.
Yeah. And so, you mentioned staycation and domestic markets, which is a very big part of hotel business now. And, if we want to look into the future, how might this translate into international travel, and how are the trends likely to evolve?
Well, so for the domestic market or staycations, if that's the case, that's, let's say, more a local term, like if it's in the same town that you're in. But domestic market, where you might be traveling just within your borders, that's obviously increasing wherever that is allowed, because that's the only option most people have at the moment. And people are saying, we are rediscovering our countries or our locations and those kind of things. But I think that will wane after a while. That'll get tired, and they'll go back to the same reasons they were traveling international before. So I think you'll just see that trending off. And then as international tourism or travel is allowed to happen again, you'll just see it rising back to its former levels.
I see. And with domestic markets kind of staying in, within their own borders and being used to that local brand of hospitality, do you think that expectation of familiarity and closeness with the hotel brand, would it become an expectation and a demand when they travel internationally in the future?
So you mean those domestic travelers, when they do travel international again, wanting that same kind of experience? No, I don't think so.
No?
I think they would probably expect it because it is domestic, and so there's that sort of more familiarity, especially if it's a language issue. They would expect to have their local language spoken, that kind of thing. But when they travel, I can't imagine they're going to be expecting the same kind of service and same kind of expectation to expect that every time their language will be spoken wherever they go, or that all of their particular preferences are known and accommodated and all of that. I think it'll just go back to experiencing international travel and all its goods and bads.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. Yeah. And so coming back to Asia, because that's the portfolio that you manage, right? Family-owned hotels and local brands are abundant here. And, what would they have to consider in negotiating their offerings, especially once hotel chains begin to step up their service?
Well, yeah, they wouldn't have, let's say, the same access to co-branding arrangements or branding arrangements that some of these chains have done with, sort of known certification systems or known health or hygiene products and cleaning products. They wouldn't have that, but I think they would just have to have their own version of it, making sure that they have evidence of their protocols. And not caught out like in some of those reality programs where they come in and inspected the hotels with the blue light and the black light and found that they weren't actually keeping to the protocol. So you got to make sure whatever you're promising, you are sticking to. And I think it's not easy enough, but the procedures that you need to follow, I think, are fairly well laid out at this point. And they can certainly copycat others that have established those protocols and do them on their own level. And whether it's a branded product or not probably doesn't matter in the end, as long as they've actually done it.
Do you see the importance of, collaborations coming in at this point then?
Well, no, I mean, that's been the focus of the big chains, of having these collaborations to give it that added oomph, where it's not just our brand saying it's clean, it's somebody else's brand who's associated with cleanliness and hygiene and all of that is giving that extra stamp of approval. But to the extent that makes a huge difference when the traveler is traveling, are they going to pick the hotel, again, not based on the brand of the hotel, but on the brand of their collaboration? I don't think so. You just have to get to a certain comfort level, but it doesn't require that level of branding.
So it really comes down to the accountability of the hotel brand itself and its identity.
Yeah, like letting everyone know that they do have a process, and you could even show them the process, whether it's through video or a listing of their guidelines of how they go through it. Got to get front and center to let everyone know that they are doing those things, and then make sure they never get caught not doing those things.
Yeah, I can imagine there would be a lot more risk of that, especially with social media coming out.
Yep. And it's actually been some of the branded hotels and some of these reality things that have been caught out. So
yeah.
Nobody's immune.
There's definitely more pressure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have, and we've asked more than 5 questions, which I think is a great discussion. Was there any other kind of wrapping up thoughts that you wanted to mention as well?
No, I think, the bottom line is, like, I've made references to it before when actually everything started back in February and March, and I referred to the clean wars that were happening in the industry. And I think that's, that was, everyone wanted to be a first mover in that regard, but actually it didn't matter so much because nobody could travel anyway. And now that everyone's kind of caught up with that, and I'm not sure that there's much advantage anybody has in any of those programs that they've worked out. So now it's just a matter of sticking to them and also conveying it in a way that people have confidence. Yeah.
Sometimes it's not about coming out first, but really keeping to that unified standard as an industry.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Robert, for spending
My pleasure
today. And to our viewers, please let us know if there's a hot button topic that you would like to see on the TTG Conversations 5 Questions news series. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Robert, again for tuning in, and have a good day.
All right. Take care.
Take care.